This is an impromptu video. Decided to do my Johnny Storm video here in the car. I'm at Walmart. Look, it's Walmart. Walmart! And, yeah, very exciting. Very, very exciting. Gotta buy some cat food. I know, I'm living on the edge. But before I do that, I figured I'd do my Johnny Storm video, explain who Johnny Storm is or should be in the MCU, or who I would make him if I was making the MCU Fantastic Four movie. So, first off, Johnny he's not Peter Parker's best friend, but out of all the superheroes, they're friends. They're the best friends in the superhero world of the Marvel Universe. They've been friends since pretty much, they were frenemies at the very beginning, for good reason. Spider-Man's first appearance in Marvel Comics with the Fantastic Four is in an issue of Spider-Man, where he breaks into the Fantastic Four building, the Baxter building, and attacks the Fantastic Four to give them a trial, a workout, an audition, tryout, whatever you want to call it. And they basically said, look, we're not paid. We're not looking to hire people because we're not paid. And Spider-Man got mad and ran off because that's Peter Parker. Met up a few times in the pages because at the time, one of the best-selling comic books was the Human Torch's, what was it, Tales to Astonish, or was he in Strange Tales? I forget. You can go look it up. And you can probably find copies of them online. They're very good stories. It is not Jack and Stan's best work, but it is good work. It's very good work. There's a reason why the Human Torch was one of their more popular characters. So let's actually talk about who Johnny is. First, let's talk about his family. When Johnny is young, he's told his father before, Johnny never knew his mom. Never. His sister Sue, his much older sister Sue, knew Johnny's mom. Again, if I was going to bring in I talked about this in one of the Sue Storm videos because there's two of them. If I was going to bring in some diversity in an organic means through the story, I would have Sue and Johnny's father have been widowed twice. That's what I would do. But even if he's only widowed once, Johnny never knew his mother. She died before he was really old enough to really get to know her. I mean, we're talking 3 or 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 on the outside, but he didn't really know his mom. Sue has been the main mom in his life, which sucks for Sue, but it's great for Johnny. It ends up working out really well for him. So his father just breaks when his wife dies and goes on a gambling spree, not just a spree, but an addiction, a lifestyle. So he ends up killing a man in quasi-self-defense and goes to prison. And he has Sue tell Johnny, and Sue is just a teenager at the time. He should not be asking her to do this. Has Sue tell Johnny that he's dead. He's serving a life sentence. He doesn't expect to see Johnny again. And he doesn't want them visiting him in prison at all. Sue is a teenager at this time. We're talking 15 to 16 years old. It's not fair to her, but Johnny's probably about 7 or 8. Roughly. These numbers can be fudged based on whatever the MCU is at the time and whatever the needs happen to be. So we can add a year, we can subtract a year. None of that part needs to be set in stone just yet. So Johnny, it is shortly after this, in my bringing them into the MCU, that Sue meets first Reed Richards, who's going to the same college she is, and then his roommate, Benjamin Grimm. Reed answers an ad in the school flyer for babysitting, and he takes a job babysitting Johnny for Sue. Shortly after that, I would have Ben start dating Sue. And Ben, who is at this point the best, most well-adjusted of all 4 of these very broken characters, breaks up with Sue, doesn't tell her why, just says it's not working out for him. And they can still be friends. And he lets her and Reed get together. He realizes that Reed is not built for most people. Because he's not. He's Reed Richards. We talked about how broken he is and everything I would have him go through, or at least some of it. I don't want to give away all my secrets on this free video. Gotta save something for if they actually hire me to make the movies, which I really don't see them doing, but one can hope. If Kevin Feige ever sees this, you know. So where were we? Johnny Storm. So Johnny ends up with both Ben. So Ben really means it. He does end up becoming a friend, probably Sue's best friend, the one person she can always rely on, even when Reed isn't, you know, the most reliable. She can still rely on Ben. Ben is always there. He's always been there for her. He always will be there for her. Ben gave up a real shot at happiness for his best friend. And we're not talking about Johnny yet, which is too bad. It's time to talk about Johnny. Johnny is whatever age Peter Parker is in the MCU. So, sophomore in high school, whatever that is. Wherever he happens to be when the Fantastic Four gets entered into the MCU. So, we have a little softness with the snap. We've got some 5 years we can play with. So anyway, I would put Johnny in Peter's class to begin with. I apologize. I'm getting over a cold. I'd put him in Peter's class. I would have adventures between him and Peter. The thing to remember about Johnny and Peter is that their personalities are very different. Johnny is an overachiever. Of course, if you grow up with Sue, Reed, and Ben as your parents, you're going to be an overachiever, because Reed is an absolute genius. Sue is one of the best doctors alive today, and Ben Grimm is the greatest fighter pilot in the history of the world up to this point, with at least 25 aerial victories in a fighter plane, which is simply an unbroken record right now. I think the highest right now. So this is after, to clarify, this is after World War II. World War II, they didn't use jet planes, so the victories there were a lot more of them, were not in jet planes. And there's a very big difference if you talk to pilots about that. So I think the highest right now is 18 by an Israeli pilot, and I think 16 or 17 is the highest American score. So yeah, if we throw Ben in there at 25, that's huge. But these are the people that are raising Johnny. You've got 3 amazing go-getters. None of these guys are sit around playing video games all day long, or spend a week on the couch when they have a week off, or anything that normal people do. These guys, sorry. I apologize. These guys are, well, they're the best of the best. They were ready to be superheroes before they became superheroes. And Johnny is no exception. Johnny is an expert mechanic. He's been working on things with Reed, whatever Reed is working on at any particular point. He's been Reed's #1 lab assistant since he was, say, 8 years old or so, which puts him in a position to be the guy they take with him on the rocket when they go into space. Even though he's only about 16, 17 at the time. So he goes with them into space. And he's probably the most equipped person in the world besides Reed to fix the rocket, because Ben is busy being either a test pilot or a Marine fighter pilot at this point. So Johnny is, for his age, at 16, Johnny is the least broken of any of these characters, because he's had 8 years with 3 people who love him desperately, raising him. And while he is still somewhat broken, he definitely feels the loss of his parents. He was still raised in a home full of love. Sue has loved him, even though the two of them should be driving each other crazy whenever they're in a scene together and not working on a project together. We should really see that brother-sister interaction, which I can see it having stagnated into annoying each other, because Sue is his mother figure, but she's also his sister. And that, she's constantly got to be nagging him because she didn't have the natural authority of being a mom. So she's constantly nagging him, and she's constantly giving her a hard time, and it would take Ben or Reed stepping in to get him to comply, because this is his world. This is his whole world. And the only thing he has control over is arguing with his sister. From a very young age. It's the only thing he had, is arguing with his sister, to feel like he actually was in charge of something. Like, children refuse to eat meals that the parents plan for them to make them feel like they actually have a choice in life. We all want to be masters of our own destinies, and children are no different than that. And it's in understanding that we begin to see where these childish conflicts arise. So that's where Johnny is coming from when he's interacting with Sue. At the beginning of the series of movies, it should be very childish the way they're interacting, both of them. But as they go on and they start having adventures together, and Johnny matures, because he's only 16-ish. We're going to go with 16 for the rest of the video. Remember, it's variable age. Depends on what's available within the MCU. But he's only 16. He's not an adult. Your brain doesn't stop forming until you're 25. So he's got all of the problems of puberty, but all the responsibilities of being an adult. He's the lab assistant to the most brilliant man in the world, or one of the most brilliant minds in the world, with access to technology no one else on the planet has, because of Reed's whole space adventure when he was a kid and his time in S.H.I.E.L.D. So, and he's very responsible with that. He's not a kid who goes and plays on sports teams. As much as he loves playing sports, he's likely to play in the neighborhood games, but he'd rather be in the lab with Reed. He'd rather be fixing machinery with Reed or souping up a car. He is friends with the kids in the neighborhood, and he does hang out with them. Reed wants to make sure he has, Reed and Sue and Ben all want to make sure he actually has interactions with other kids, and he's adjusted socially as well. Which sounds so scientific, but parents worry about these things. They do. If you're not a parent, ask your parents. They worry about that, especially kids who get homeschooled, which there's a chance that Johnny was getting homeschooled. No, Johnny was definitely getting homeschooled. Even if he was going to school this entire time, when he came home, Reed was teaching him. And Reed wasn't teaching him, Ben was teaching him. And Sue was too busy. But she was there as a mom. For the most, when they needed to have a mom, she was there. Even when they didn't, she was there. And they still got that fighting interaction. So I see them picking on each other. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Don't do that one. But things like that. Be creative. We all have kids. If we don't have kids, you know some kids. You were a kid. Go spend some time with kids before you write this, and find something that they do that's wonderful. Annoying as all get out, but wonderful. We should see that with Ben and Sue. You should also see that Johnny has a sense of how far to push it. He's a very smart kid, so he knows how far to push it with Sue, and he knows when to stop nagging and to go brush his teeth. He knows when, or stop pushing back because she's nagging him and go brush his teeth. He knows when to eat his Brussels sprouts. She's the one he really pushes a lot of the boundaries with, because Reed will encourage him to do whatever he wants. That came out wrong. Reed will encourage him to seek out after projects that excite him, understanding that excites him, learning that excites him. If he likes working on engines, Reed's going to bring back an engine and drop it off in the garage. Pull something out of a scrapyard, a junkyard, bring it to their house, and just let Johnny go. Johnny work on the engine, pull it apart, and put it back together, and give him time to just play with the engine. And it's going to make Johnny respect Reed in a way he doesn't respect Sue. Not that he doesn't respect Sue. It's just a different. I don't know. I think I said enough on that. I don't really feel like I'm getting over being sick. I don't want to super explain everything here. You should understand what I mean by that. He does respect Sue, but he respects Reed in a different way, because Reed, it's more than the normal difference between moms and dads. Because in general, this is just in general, please don't crucify me on the cross of How dare you assume gender and whatnot? But you can see this in general. Fathers are more permissive, but when they... God, I can't even finish this. I'm going to get torn apart. Fathers generally let the kids give them a longer leash. I think that would probably be they give them more rope. And they give them more rope so that they can go farther, but also they're giving them more rope so that when they screw up, they're hanging themselves. Fathers are disciplinarian, and they're the brakes in a lot of ways. And often. Not even 90% of the time, just often. Not even, I would say, 70% of the time. Just, you can see this if you're looking for it. If you're just watching father and child, not just sons, it's for both sons and daughters, but fathers tend to be the brakes. Until they put the brakes on, you can go. You can go as far and as fast as you want until he puts on the brakes. Mothers tend to be more of a governor that keeps your speed down and wants to make sure you're safe all the time. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And this analogy is going to break down fast, and I'm going to get ripped apart if this ever becomes popular. But you'll see that I want to express that in the relationship between Johnny and Reed and Johnny and Sue. Johnny is the leader of his group of friends. He's a hard worker. He puts his heart into anything he does. So if he's hanging out with a bunch of motorheads, he's usually the best mechanic there, because Reed has encouraged him in this. If he's hanging out with sports guys, well, Reed was a football player. So was Ben. They want him to play sports. They may not have enough time for him to play in organized sports, and Reed's not great with schedules to begin with. But I could see him in a lot of pickup games over the years. But Peter is kind of a dork. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. He's at a science school, and he's the biggest dork at a science school. Johnny is going to be the exact opposite. Johnny is the king of cool. He's very confident, and that confidence is earned. A lot of the wounds that Reed just doesn't address his wounds. He just curls them up inside and ignores them. Ben does address his wounds from living with his aunt and uncle. During the last few years of high school, he learned to really who he is and how to address this stuff and rely on people, which was why he's so stable when he meets Sue and Reed. But during the time of the Fantastic Four, Ben is the most broken because he's just been turned into the Thing, and effectively the entire world is made out of paper for him now, and he's afraid of destroying it. And Johnny's the most well-adjusted, all over. He's still got those wounds, but they're not as deep as everybody else's wounds because he's grown up with love. He's been fully loved his entire life. Even after his parents died, he had Sue, Reed, and Ben, and now he's still got Sue, Reed, and Ben to deal with this. When they initially get their powers, there's a breakup time period where Sue is trying to adjust to this because she doesn't know how to deal with her wounds, her emotional wounds. Ben has gone off mostly to try and not, so he wouldn't accidentally kill somebody. He's put himself in isolation. Reed is broken because he's lost his only support system that he's come to depend on, and Ben and Sue. But he's the one with Johnny, and he's just training Johnny. Johnny wants to learn everything he can about his powers as soon as he gets them. He wants to be a superhero. He is looking forward to this. He has found his purpose in life, and he is pursuing it with the same vigor and vim that he pursued sports when he was playing sports, and he pursued motors when he was interested in cars, and when he pursued lab work with Reed, and when he pursued his studies. He is a driven, A-type personality. No, maybe not A-type, but he has a very driven personality with a fun-loving flip to it. So he's very driven, and he's very fun-loving. And if you get those two parts right, because everybody, all four of these characters are steamrollers, but the flip is what makes them different. And Johnny is the fun-loving flip more than anyone else. He loves to have a good time, and he loves being a superhero, and he's been training. He's the most trained in his powers when the Fantastic Four get together because he's been pushing himself for control so he can fly. He loves flying. very first moment he realized he was a Human Torch, he took off into the sky, and he realizes the inherent danger to his powers, because he's not invulnerable. He's not infinite. He can stop bullets by melting them, but he can't. If he crashes, he's going to get hurt. He takes his powers very seriously. He's a very serious young man, and when he's not being serious, he is letting off steam like nobody else you met. Well, probably like that one guy in college, who was always a good time and always fun to be around, which is exactly the opposite of Peter Parker. So a lot of when I'm defining Johnny, it's in his relationship with Peter and his relationship to others. Him and Peter end up getting along very, very well, but it's a process. Peter is where Johnny is outgoing, Peter is shy. Where Johnny is exploratory, Peter is cautious. And the two of them work very well together, but at the same time, they're such different personalities. They argue, they quip at each other, especially when they're in costume. They really, it's one of those love-hate friendships. You ever have a buddy who you kind of want to beat most of the time, and they kind of want to beat you most of the time, but they have your back 100% of the time? And if you've been in the military, you know exactly, you have a person in your head right now, somebody from boot camp, somebody from your first unit or your first assignment or whatever you want to call it, or whatever it was called in your branch. There is somebody who had your back 100% of your back 100% of the time, who you thought was just a complete jerk most of the time. Probably a drinking buddy. And that is, that's Pete and Johnny. That is the Human Torch and Spider-Man right there. They give each other a hard time. They're not used to working with each other at the beginning. They get in each other's way. They trip each other up. But over the years, they become excellent partners in crime. They trust each other implicitly. Johnny Storm is one of the first people to learn Peter Parker's real identity. He's one of the only people to know Peter Parker's identity. Depending on your continuity. Sometimes Peter tells his identity to the world, but when Peter Parker's identity is a secret, Johnny Storm knows it, and he keeps it. And they prank each other. Both of them have a love for pranks. Johnny pranks the Thing all the time. Once the Fantastic Four comes back together for their first mission, he starts pranking Ben. He's trying to get Ben out of his doldrums. Ben isn't coming out of his doldrums anytime soon, and Johnny just doesn't get it. Because Johnny's powers are just as destructive as Ben's, maybe more destructive. And that doesn't stop Johnny from loving life. But Johnny can turn his powers off, and Ben can't. At no point can Ben just relax. And Johnny just doesn't. He's young, he's a kid, it's not sinking in. It takes a while for the rest of the Fantastic Four to get that too. But Ben is always there for his friends, and he's always there for Johnny. Ben and Johnny are best friends. You don't expect your ex-girlfriend's little brother, who is practically her son, to become one of your best friends. But that's what happens. There's about an 8 to 10 year difference between them, and they get along great. I mean, just great. Excuse me. So yeah, Johnny doesn't respect Ben's boundaries. I think that's a key point to both of their characters. They're more like friends. They're more like brothers than an older brother and a younger brother than anything else. And Johnny plays it up. He is much more, as the series goes on, he is much more disrespectful of Ben's space than he is of anyone else. Him and Sue come to an understanding. I think, as the years go by, Johnny becomes somebody who really respects Sue and appreciates everything she sacrificed for him. And she sacrificed a lot. But Ben just becomes a bit of a curmudgeon in Johnny's opinion, where he's always so careful and cautious that it just drives Johnny nuts. Because that's not who Ben was before the accident, before the explosion that created the Fantastic Four, the space ride. And Johnny kind of misses his friend who's there, but they have each other's backs through the most dangerous of times. They trust each other very much so. Initially, we should see in that first movie a couple of times where Ben takes the hit for everybody on the team. Everybody. At one point or another, Ben is going to take the hit. He's going to step in the way of danger and take the hit. Or he's going to wreak horrible vengeance upon anyone who attacks his family. And Johnny is just going to come to rely on that faster than anyone else on the team. Because Reed is scared of losing Ben again. Losing Ben and Sue at the same time destroyed Reed to the point where he needs them back just to be able to function properly. So he can hide it. So Reed can take all of his hurt and just push it down again because he has support again. He never addresses that hurt till maybe later on. Johnny's probably the only person to actually touch Ben. And maybe Sue. When Sue does it, though, it's a big moment. So I don't want to take away from that. But Johnny will just smack him around. I can see the two of them play fighting. Well, Johnny play fighting with Ben until it pisses him off to the point where Ben snaps at him and tries to just scare him off, which is never going to work. And you see it in the comics where they go at each other all the time. And that's part of... Like, Reed will let Ben be in his doldrums. He's just happy to have him back and around. Sue doesn't know how to fix him, so she kind of just... It takes her a while to start just treating him the same way she always treated him, but it should take a movie or two for that to... We should see that grow. That should be an organic thing that the audience actually gets to see, whether they appreciate it or not. Marvel's great with this. Like in Endgame, when Hulk is pushing buttons on the machine, he has a pencil because his fingers are too big. It's like, it's too big to press the button. I'll hit 5 of them. So he uses a pencil, and he takes the pencil and he pushes the button with the pencil. This is a pen. Little things like that are replete throughout the entire MCU, and so we should be seeing those sort of growth things with Sue and Ben. And then, I know I keep bringing it back to the others. So Johnny's fun-loving thing is something the audience will appreciate. That is definitely what Chris Evans got right in the first Fantastic Four movie. It was definitely the part of Johnny we all really appreciated. Johnny in the comics is much more cautious than Chris Evans was. He knows his boundaries. He's careful with his boundaries, and he's always pushing them. He's always pushing for his flame to go on longer, for him to be able to burn hotter, for him to be able to fly faster, to maneuver better. He is constantly practicing. You'll see that in his solo adventures too. Is that he's always training. He's always practicing. More than anyone else, probably in all of Marvel Comics, Johnny Storm is always practicing. He's always improving himself. He's kind of boring if he wasn't so much fun. Like when he's being boring, he's just as boring as Reed. He's just as boring as Sue. He's just as boring as Ben when Ben's working on avionics and aircraft design and all that stuff. He's just as serious-minded as the rest of them. Probably more so. But when he cuts loose, he cuts loose. We should see him flying around for fun around the city. Once the Fantastic Four is outed, he flies everywhere. He just takes flights around the city. We should see him in other movies, in Disney Plus shows, where Johnny is just flying around the city in the background. You see him shoot across the sky in the middle of, I don't know, WandaVision or something, or Winter Soldier and Falcon, or whatever they come out with. You should just see him randomly when people are in New York. You see Johnny Storm flying by in the sky, and they're like, the first couple of times they should point it out, and then they should stop pointing it out because it's just normal. They're used to. You see Spider-Man swing by in his webs. You see Johnny fly by in the sky. It would actually be a great scene to see in the background on like the top of a building. It wouldn't even have to be the main actors. We could get, stunt actors to play them. But as a nod to the fans, a little Easter egg, you actually have Johnny and Spidey sitting on the edge of a building talking, and it's just in the background of one of the Disney Plus shows. They're just sitting up there having a chat. You would see in the sky Human Torch fly by, and you'd see Spider-Man web by, and then you'd see the two of them just up there talking while exposition or plot or something is going on, or they're doing a handoff or whatever it is. That would be cool. Johnny is a great character. He's fun to write. He's fun to play. He's great to watch on screen. He's excellent comic relief. He's definitely the comic relief you need when Ben starts getting all depressed. Because that goes back to Ben. Ben's not depressed. He's scared. He's scared of hurting somebody. He's scared of not ever going to be able to live the life he ever wanted. So I guess that kind of leads to a depression. But if he could get his powers under control, if he could shut them off, he would be well-adjusted like that. But he can't. And that's Ben, though. That's not Johnny. Johnny can shut him off, so Johnny is well-adjusted. And we should have a love triangle going on between Shuri and Johnny and Peter, because they're all science nerds. And I love that about them. And I could see the three of them getting together in an Avengers movie where they're working through some problem, and the three of them are just geeking out together. And Johnny and Peter are one-upping each other, or trying to one-up each other in front of Shuri to impress her. Even though they both probably have girlfriends at home, when the two of them get together, they compete. That's another thing about Peter and Johnny, is they're very competitive. Peter is very envious of what Johnny has. Johnny has the family. Broken, shattered family that it is, Johnny has a family that loves and supports him. And he's got all the fame, and the Daily Bugle doesn't hate him, and all the rest of this stuff. And Johnny is just beloved. And Peter is not. He's hated by people. No matter how many people he saves, there's still people who hate him. People don't treat him with respect. If he's on the street, people will talk to him like he's just an idiot wearing pajamas. And Johnny is treated like the king of the world. And that's not Johnny's fault. That's Reed and Ben working their stuff. That's the government trusting Ben and eventually Reed. Because remember, Reed got kicked out of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's what being known who your real identity is. And Sue being a respected surgeon throughout New York City. They're bringing a lot of gravitas with them. Is that the right word? Probably not. My head's a little wonky still from the cold. But let's go with gravitas. So they've got this gravitas, this goodwill. Let's just go with goodwill. And Peter never has that. And he's envious of Johnny of that. Johnny is the king of the school. Everybody knows who he is, except Flash Thompson doesn't think he's all that. But Flash will still hang out with him over Peter. And Johnny is he's the king of the school. He's an awesome guy. He's not a big sports figure, but everybody knows he's a giant superhero and part of the Fantastic Four, and he's amazing and wonderful. And everybody loves him. And I could even see, once he's introduced, conversations between MJ and Peter, where MJ's like, why can't you be more like Johnny? And it just drives Peter up the wall. Up the wall. Be nuts over that. Just drive him crazy. Why can't you be more like Johnny? And Johnny would be oblivious to this, because he likes Peter. He likes Peter a lot. He likes competing with Peter. He likes hanging out with Peter. He likes fighting crime with Peter. He wants to be a superhero, and Peter's a superhero, and the two of them can be superhero buddies. And that's awesome. And he doesn't get why Peter isn't always in a great mood like Johnny is, because Johnny's always in a great mood. He's always cheerful. He's always having a good time. Even in the worst of crises, he believes that Reed and Ben and Sue can get through anything and can do anything. And he just has to come in and pitch and do his part, and they're going to save the day, and he's going to be part of it, and it's going to be awesome. And he has faith in everybody, something they all need, because none of them have faith in themselves. We can also do a storyline with Johnny having a girlfriend who doesn't want him to be a superhero or wants him to be normal when he's around her. They did that in the comics. It was okay. I know I'm wincing when I say that because it wasn't great, but it was okay. It could be done better. It was pretty obvious Stan Lee used to write really bad romance stuff in the style of Archie comics. Millie the Model, which I believe he was writing at the same time. I think that's it. I want to do 2 more videos in this vein, one on Doom, because everybody gets Doom wrong. Not everybody, but both Fantastic Four franchises got Doom very, very wrong. I think I got hair on my face. Anyway, they got Doom very, very wrong. And when you get Doom wrong, it ruins the movie. He is not the classic villain that they make him out to be. He is not a hero. He is a villain. He is a classic villain. He's an amazing, amazing classic villain. But he's not the archetypical standard supervillain. He's not a megalomaniac to begin with. Ruling Latveria is enough for him right now, and you have to understand that. He understands where he sits in the scale of power, but Doom is he has delusions, but they are minor delusions, and they're all about his ego. They're not about where he stands in the world. He understands Latveria is not currently in a position to take over the world, so his goal is not to take over the world. The goal is currently to rule Latveria and see where he can go from there, what opportunities arises, what he has to do to go from there. Maybe eventually he'll rule the world, maybe eventually he'll rule the cosmos, but right now he's got his goals set. Very goal-oriented person. And it is the arrival of Reed Richards as a superhero that leads Dr. Doom into the world of villainy. It was never about taking over the world or defeating all the rest of the heroes. The only person Dr. Doom wants revenge on is Reed Richards. This is why Ben Grimm is his archenemy, but he never realizes that. Which, I just throw that out there, but it's, if you read through the first 300 issues of the Fantastic Four, it is Ben who is constantly the foil, who's mostly, not constantly, mostly the foil for Dr. Doom. Sue's the one who beats him in their first episode, and Reed does go toe-to-toe with him once and just utterly destroys him completely. But it is Ben who's usually the one who defeats Doom. And Doom consistently underestimates him because his fixation is on Reed, but Reed's fixation is never on Doom. So, Johnny's awesome. He's great. He's fun to write. You got to get his drive in there. The fact that he is the most trained, self-trained superhero in the Marvel Universe should become apparent. That if Captain America was in there with him, I would actually, still, but Captain America's old now, and that's fine. That's great. That was a good ending. I appreciate what they did. Even if I would have done it differently, I still appreciate what they did. And whether or not, that also comes down to whether or not Chris Evans wanted to do any more Captain America work. So anyway, I could definitely see some training montage or some thing in one of these crossover movies where he's training with, say, Falcon, and he's now lapping Falcon. On your left! And Falcon's an older guy who's in excellent, amazing shape trying to keep up with Captain America, and here's this kid who doesn't have any kind of physical, any kind of power that would help him with running, who has been pushing himself just as hard on his own, just so he would be in great physical shape, so he can be a superhero, because that drive is inside of him, where he's doing the, on your left, to Falcon. Not as often as Captain America did, but enough, even just having him do it once would be enough to make Falcon push himself harder and just be annoyed, angry at this kid, which Anthony Mackie does a fantastic job pulling that off. So yeah, that's the Johnny video. Drive, fun-loving, trusts 100% in the rest of his team. they're all the heart of the team. Like, this whole Fantastic Four thing isn't about one character. It's about a family of two brothers, or three brothers and a sister, and at the same time, a mother, father, and a son dynamic with their Uncle Ben. Huh? Uncle Ben? Oh. You see what I did there? Oh, with great power comes great responsibility. No, I'll do it in the Thing voice. Hold on. Last night, my wife, she met me at the door. Okay, we're there. You know, with great power comes great responsibility. Oh, we should have Ben say that. With great power comes great responsibility. You should say that to Johnny at some point. I would laugh my butt off at that if I was a viewer and they pulled that off. With great power comes great responsibility. Sorry, that's so cheesy. It's like at some point, Robert Downey Jr. should have said to Benedict Cumberbatch during the whole Avengers Infinity War thing, you know, no shit, Sherlock. But Ben wouldn't have it, which is too bad because the fans would have loved it. It's campy, it's cheesy, it's awful, and we'd love it. It's fan service. Service the fans once in a while. Don't make the whole movie fan service. But like, people were complaining about Darth Vader just ripping through the rebels in Rogue One. He's only in a couple scenes, but in the scene where he's just tearing through the rebels with his lightsaber in the Force, that was just fan service. Yeah, it was about a minute and a half of fan service. And it was great. It was just the right amount of great. Darth Vader came in, kicked butt, established who he was. And was it a little bit of fan service? A little bit. Did it serve the story? A little bit. It wasn't like it wasn't part of the story. Did it add a lot of high tension to the scene? Yeah, lots of it. That was great. Do more of that. Anyway, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, absolutely fantastic character, fun to write. A lot of jokes you can put in with this guy. Have him be very respectful to Reed, who's kind of his surrogate father. Have him act like Sue's his older sister and them picking on each other. Jessica Alba and Chris Evans did a fantastic job with that. And, but more of that. And have him just annoy the heck out of Ben, because it's the only way he knows to get Ben out of his doldrums, and it's not going to work. But he's not going to stop doing it either, because he wants his friend back. He wants his uncle, brother, whatever, Dutch uncle, whatever Ben is. He wants him back. He wants him back in his life. All right, I got to go buy cat food. Yeah, I do. Oh. No, I got a good life. I'm not complaining about my life. Neither is my cat. I'll see y'all later. This has been... Oh, I did that at the beginning. You guys want a song? I can end with a song. No, I can't. My voice isn't up to it. I could do maybe part of a verse, but music for Johnny should be Highway to the Danger Zone from Top Gun. It should be Let's Hear It for the Boys from Footloose. It should be high speed, high impact, dance beats, just a blast with respect. Like, we want to encapsulate this character. Whenever I'm writing a Johnny Storm scene, I always like to put on my Top Gun soundtrack, which is why we're getting some of these 80s references. Yeah, Maverick from Top Gun. Not Maverick, but the tone of Top Gun is definitely the tone that Johnny-centered scene should have, where he's, much like Ben, he is the embodiment of a fighter pilot. He's confidence, more than Ben. Even more than Ben, he is the embodiment of the classic, self-confident, swaggering fighter pilot who thinks he's God's gift to women, but underneath it all has a lot of respect for people. So if he's out on the town, he can be as obnoxious as anyone else. But one-on-one, he's a great guy. He's having fun. The reason why he's obnoxious is because he's having fun, and people who aren't having fun aren't going to like being around him. If you want to go to be depressed because you're Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and life sucks right now, and there's Johnny Storm whooping it up, there's a little bit of hatred there from Peter. Not evil hatred, envy, nothing that turns into horribleness, but it definitely sparks the rivalry. Peter is always the one sparking the rivalry, because if you just want to have a good time, hanging out with Johnny is what you want to do.
And if you want to have a good time and Johnny's around, Johnny wants to have a good time with you. So it's Peter who's sparking the rivalry. It's Peter who's bringing in, who makes it into a competition, who makes it everything into a challenge. It's always Peter. It's never Johnny. Johnny he's always up for the challenge and he enjoys them, but he's not. And he's very serious-minded, but not in the same way Peter is. Peter is at a different sense of a heavier weight of responsibility. He doesn't have the opportunity to pass that off on the other 3 other people on his team. Peter handles it all by himself, and he envies Johnny for not having to handle it all by himself. Yeah, highway to the danger. Highway to the danger zone. My throat's hurt. I can't hit my full voice. Gotta take it my way to the danger zone. Yeah, that's Johnny. That is definitely Johnny. Don't Stop Believing. That's a Johnny style song. Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street light. People. That sucked. Have a great day.